What happened in this video will shock you. You really need to watch this video. Let's go, guys.
My name is Aziza Kabibi, and I survived over 17 years of abuse at the hands of my father that resulted in 4 children by him. I had a huge family. My parents and what ended up being a lot more siblings lived in the same house that my grandmother immigrated from England and purchased here in America. It was a huge house in New Jersey, and essentially we were one big happy family. But there was some tension between my father, being that he was American, and my grandparents, they were West Indian. So I just remember hearing arguments back and forth sometimes when I was young. Well, as I got older, I started to witness my father hit my mom. The reasons varied from anything from whether he didn't like her attitude or she confronted him about something in their relationship to issues that they had with my grandparents. And that put a strain on me as a child and my relationship with my grandparents and my aunts. Then he decided that he was going to be polygamous. He was going to adopt the polygamous lifestyle, which my mom's parents were completely against. And that just caused more controversy and more tension within the family. But as I got older, you as a kid, you get used to these things. This is just how your family is. I grew up isolated because I was also homeschooled. So along with, my father being polygamous and him delivering his children at home, he also homeschooled his children. So I did not really build social behaviors that you see more common in children that go to regular public schools or schools in general. So one day, one of my sisters was a baby. I was 8 years old. It was just before my 9-year-old birthday. My mom sent me to go talk to my dad. Now, the roles that my parents played in my life, other than being my teachers and my guides for everything, all of my knowledge came from them. And all of our rules, regulations, what was right and wrong, all came from my parents. And because I didn't have interaction with many children outside of my family, there was nothing to compare to. So of course, I was afraid of my dad because he was the one that would dish out punishment if my siblings and I did anything wrong. So when my mother told me that daddy wanted to talk to me alone, I was so nervous because I could not imagine what it was that I possibly could have done wrong. I went into my parents' bedroom when my father was standing, and the things that he said to me was actually very encouraging. And he told me that he was proud of me and that I was very responsible, and he was proud of how well I did with my schoolwork and helping to take care of my siblings. But I still wondered, well, why are we having this conversation separately? So within all of his commending and his praise, he then told me that he had to teach me how to be a woman, which I didn't understand. And he said that he had to teach me how to be a woman, he had to teach me what to do as a wife, and that all fathers did this with their daughters. Then he took me into this little back room that was a closet, and he told me to lay down. And he lifted up my dress. I didn't know what to do. He was daddy. I could not deny him. I could not fight against him. I couldn't even complain. This is how strict he was. But at the same time, I was so uncomfortable because from what I understood, no one was supposed to touch my private areas except mommy whenever she had to check if there was something wrong. He did what he did to me for what seemed like forever at the time. I just closed my eyes and tried to think of other things. Like my favorite thing as a child growing up was My Little Ponies. So I just thought about My Little Ponies and tried to ironically do what my parents had told me to do whenever I had nightmares, which was to have good thoughts. So I did that. until I felt him pulling my dress down, and he told me to get up and put up my underwear, and he hugged me, and he said that I couldn't tell anyone and that I couldn't tell mommy because she wouldn't understand, and it would make her go crazy. And I kept the secret. After that, throughout my childhood, he started coming into my room at night, almost every night, and continued to, of course, at the time as a child, I didn't know that it was, he performed different acts on me growing up. He raped me when I was 10 years old. That was around the time that he told my mother, and that it was necessary because I had a very bad skin condition. I had allergies. I wasn't allowed to go to doctors. My father basically treated any ailments within the family. So my father told my mom that this abuse that he was doing to me was helping my health overall. And when she told me that he had told her what he was doing to me, I asked her if at the time one of his girlfriends, did she tell her? And the reason why I asked her this was because my father had introduced his girlfriend into me. So his girlfriend would come over, stay the night with my family. My father would get me up, and he would rape me while his girlfriend molested me during the time. So my mother didn't know that. So when I asked her, her name was Akua. When I asked her, did Akua tell her, her face looks like she saw a ghost. That was the first time that I witnessed her confront my father. When she confronted my father about what he was doing to me and the fact that he had introduced another adult to me as well, he beat her with a belt. And after that, she did not question him anymore. When I was about 14 years old, my father purchased a house in East Orange, New Jersey. The house that he purchased was dilapidated. It needed to be renovated. So we lived there on a construction site as we rebuilt the house. And it was during that time that I got pregnant with my first child by him. I guess it was melancholy. Like he wasn't upset, but he wasn't happy. So I don't know what was going on in his head, but when it did start stirring, because when my father's girlfriend, the same girlfriend that had me with him, found out that I was pregnant, she asked, well, is the baby going to be deformed? And that was the first time I saw him have an emotional reaction about it. And he's like, what are you talking about? And she then started to explain that close family members that create a child, the baby would come out deformed. And that made him very angry. And he yelled at her. I don't know what else happened between them, but that was the most emotional response that I had seen him have. Then I had the baby. I started having labor pains, very mild labor pains. I did not know I was in labor. I felt like it was mild menstrual cramps, and I tried to go use the bathroom. Now, we did not have running water. We did not have plumbing. We didn't have a toilet. What we had was a makeshift toilet on a Home Depot bucket with a toilet seat on top of it that then, after it got to a certain level, we would go and dump out in the backyard. We'd bury in the backyard. So I was sitting on this makeshift toilet and I was pushing, thinking that I just needed to use the bathroom, and water splattered in front of me. I screamed out. My mom came running out of the one room that was finished enough for me and my family to live in. And she looked between my legs and she said my baby's head was there. So she called my father. My father and my mom brought me into the room, laid me on the mattress that was on the floor that we all slept on, and my baby just came flying out. So I barely had a labor. I barely pushed, and my baby was there. My father checked her over. You know, he had already delivered so many of my siblings with my assistance of some of my siblings. And my mother knew what to do with delivering children from his other girlfriends. And she didn't have any health issues that we could see. She was not deformed like my father's girlfriend said that she might be. And after he saw that, he decided that it was ordained by God that he continued to breed me, continued to make children, because the human race was facing extinction, and it would be his blue blood children that would repopulate the earth. By the time I had my first son for my father, well, my first and last son for my father, I was about 21. And by that time, this was our life. My father abusing not only just me, but also 3 other of my sisters was just a normal thing. One of my sisters did get pregnant from my father around this time, so we had our sons in the same year. Then one day, my son, who was 5 months old, my father was away on a business trip. My mom was still home. And my brother, who now had become an adult and was sent outside of the family to help financially by working as a graphics designer and editing music videos, he had come to visit. And my son woke up with what I later learned was seizures. And my brother convinced my mom to let him take me and the baby to the hospital. When we got to the hospital, it was all new to me. And they gave me all of this paperwork to fill out, name, information. They asked me if I had medical insurance, all of those things. My brother did a lot of the talking for me. But when I filled out the paperwork, you know, I had this feeling that this could be an opportunity to indirectly reach out for help. So some of the information had asked for my parents' information and also my child's parents' information. And I put him down as both. So that raised a red flag for the social worker at the hospital. So she came and interviewed me. Then on one evening, a woman comes in, and it turned out that she was from what was at the time known as DIFUS. They're now known as DCP&P. And it turned out that the doctors did call state social services. And when she pulled me aside, the first thing she said to me was that she was taking my children. So I immediately clammed up. I now had my father threatening me, but then this woman wanted to take my children away. And then she did tell my father that she needed to come to the house. She got information about how many other children were at the house. She went to the house. And the next time she came back and spoke to me, she said that she was taking my other children into custody and she was bringing them in the hospital to check them out. And my father was compliant. He did not argue about it. He did not question it, but he maintained his threats to me that I was to not tell them anything. So when I say that all of this difficult, what seemed like its own tragedy with what my son went through ended up to be a complete blessing in disguise, because then my children were taking out of the environment, that the toxic environment that my father had created. One day when my father was taking one of my younger sisters into a bedroom to rape her, I stood up to him. For some reason, I just burst out yelling, cursing him out. I cursed him out. I cursed my mom out, because I realized if she stood up to him way years back, if she reached out for help herself, then this would not have gotten to the point that where we were at the time. So I held her responsible as well. And I took my sister into the bedroom and locked the door. And the next morning I woke up, my dad was gone because he didn't respond. He didn't respond. I think he was so in shock at the time. He just sat down with me yelling at him. And after that, my mom, a friend of the family's, took my mom to report my father for domestic violence. And then a warrant was put out for his arrest. I don't know that much of the process, but essentially that's what liberated us from him. I ended up moving, so my father couldn't find me. And then my sisters and I got together and we talked about reporting him. So we decided to report him to the police. It took them a year to find him. In 2006, he was arrested while trying to leave the country. After he was arrested while trying to leave the country, he made bail. And then he showed up with a child. Part of the conditions of his bail was that he could not be around children. He showed up with, I guess, his most recent child, who was 18 months old. And the judge arrested him on the spot. And they put him in jail with, I think it was a $1 million bail, which he wasn't able to pay. And he stayed there until his first trial, which was in 2010. So he was charged for aggravated sexual assault. He was charged for over, I think, 75 different acts of assault, lewdness with a child, abuse of a child, child neglect and endangerment. The list just goes on. And he's now serving 90 years in prison. So he did have 2 trials, one for my sister, which was in 2010. And the second trial where I had to testify was for the crimes that he committed against me. That was in 2013. So after escaping my father, getting my children back, I put myself through college on scholarships mostly, but I graduated magna cum laude with 2 bachelor's degrees. And I speak out about these issues. I have made myself a voice for those who don't feel that they are strong enough to speak out for themselves. And between my book and my nonprofit organization and the work that I do online through social media, it has just really raised awareness about these issues. And my ultimate goal, yes, is to end things like child abuse and domestic violence and gender-based violence, but also shine light on predators. And I know in general, most people, we focus on survivors, and justly so, because survivors have to heal in order to function in the world. But at the same time, we also have to focus on the cause of why survivors have to heal, which are the predators, which are the abusers. So my biggest message to other survivors is that though it may take time, it is possible to heal completely. And if you focus on valuing yourself and understanding that what happened to you is not who you are, and it's really who you are is based on the decisions that you've made and the choices that you make going forward. And in doing that and focusing on yourself and focusing on your healing, you can be healed. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Even though some days it don't seem like it. It is okay to put your head under the covers every now and then. But, it is possible. It is possible to heal. Very probable to heal and be